Welcome to Monk's Temple. Find a place of comfort now, and let the world outside soften into the background. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just for these moments, allow yourself to simply be here. Notice the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, the natural, effortless flow of life moving through you. In this breath, and the next, you can feel the most fundamental truth of existence: everything is in motion. Every cell, every thought, every feeling is part of a great, graceful dance of change. Yet, so much of our lives is spent trying to pause this dance, to freeze a single frame and call it mine. We build our identities on foundations of sand and wonder why we feel so unsteady. Tonight, we begin a journey of returning to the wisdom of flow, to the liberating truth that nothing solid lasts, and that within that very truth lies our greatest peace. Consider the nature of sound. A note from a piano string hangs in the air, beautiful and full, and then, it fades. It doesn't just stop, it dissolves, returning to silence. The silence wasn't empty before the note, and it isn't broken after. The note was a temporary event within an enduring stillness. Our lives are much the same. Experiences arise, joy, sorrow, success, loss, like distinct notes in a melody. We cling to the pleasant notes, mourning their end, and resist the dissonant ones, wishing them away. But the Buddha's profound insight, which he called Anicca, impermanence, invites us to listen to the whole composition. He observed that all conditioned things, our bodies, our relationships, our thoughts, the very stars above, are in a constant state of arising and passing away. This is not a philosophy of pessimism. It is the clear-eyed recognition of reality. A mountain seems eternal, but it is slowly being worn down by rain and wind. A feeling of anger feels all-consuming, but watch it closely, it shifts, weakens, and is replaced by something else. To see Anicca is to see the world without the filter of our wish for it to stand still. I recall walking through an old-growth forest years ago, a place where giant trees reached for the sky. My guide pointed not just to the living giants, but to the massive, moss-covered logs lying on the forest floor, trees that had stood for centuries before finally falling. "This is the most fertile place in the forest," she whispered. On these decaying logs, entire new ecosystems thrived. Seedlings of hemlock and cedar took root in the rich, broken-down wood, drawing nourishment from the remains of what came before. There was no tragedy in the fallen giant, only transformation. Its death was not an end, but a vital part of a continuous cycle of giving life. It was a perfect lesson in Anicca. Nothing is wasted, everything is recycled into new form. Our own lives, with their seasons of growth, stability, and decline, are part of this same sacred, intelligent process. Our resistance to the falling, to the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, the aging of the body, is like the tree resisting the forest floor. But the floor is not an enemy, it is the next stage of belonging. If this perspective brings you a sense of peace, you can bring Monk's Temple with you by subscribing. It's a simple way to carry this space of reflection forward, a quiet companion on your journey. Our pain, then, rarely comes from change itself. It springs from the tension between the way things are and our deep-seated desire for them to be otherwise. We want the pleasant melody to play forever. We want to skip the difficult passages. This wanting, this clinging, is what the Buddha named as the root of suffering, dukkha. It's a thirsty grasping. We grasp at people, hoping they will forever be a source of our happiness. We grasp at achievements, believing they will finally cement our worth. We even grasp at our own self-image, defending it fiercely against any evidence that it might be fluid. We live as if we are the conductor, demanding the orchestra follow our personal score, rather than listening to the music that is already being played. This raises the central question: who is the conductor? Who is this self that is so busy clinging and resisting? We carry a narrative, a character we've been writing since childhood. It has traits, history, and motivations. It feels utterly real. But if we examine our direct experience, this solid I becomes elusive. Are you the same person you were at 7? Your memories are different, your body is different, your beliefs are likely different. Are you the anger you felt this morning? No, you witnessed it come and go. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, non-self, is an invitation to investigate this mystery. He suggested that what we call the self is a temporary, dynamic process, a flowing together of 5 aggregates: physical form, feeling tones, perceptions, mental habits, and moments of consciousness. Like a whirlpool in a river, it has a recognizable pattern, but it is made entirely of changing water. There is no permanent, separate thing at the center of the whirlpool. There is only the flowing activity itself. Seeing this doesn't erase you, it liberates you from the exhausting burden of maintaining a fictional solidity. A woman I met, a potter, shared a story that illuminated this. She described her early years, desperate to create perfect pots, symmetrical, flawless, beautiful. She would become furious with herself over the smallest wobble, the tiniest crack in the glaze. Her identity was tied to being a great potter. One day, a pot she had worked on for hours collapsed on the wheel just before finishing. Instead of the usual frustration, she felt a strange calm. She looked at the collapsed clay and saw not failure, but simply clay returning to its essential state. It was free to become anything again. In that moment, she said, the great potter dissolved. What remained was just a woman, her hands in clay, present with the material in front of her. The pressure vanished. From that day, her work changed. It became more fluid, more expressive, more alive. She wasn't making objects to prove herself anymore. She was participating in a dance with form and formlessness. Her ego, the potter, had been a tight fist. Its release didn't end her art, it allowed her artistry to truly begin, flowing from a place of openness rather than a need for permanence. This is the profound shift that wisdom invites. It's the move from identifying with the temporary notes to resting in the silent awareness that hears them all. The suffering of life is the friction of grasping. The peace of life is the ease of letting the river flow, while knowing you are the riverbed, not the leaves caught in the current. Our practice is not to stop the flow, but to recognize our true nature as the space that holds it. Let's continue. The great irony of our existence is that we search for peace by trying to solidify a world that is inherently fluid. We believe if we can just arrange the external pieces perfectly, the right partner, the secure job, the admired reputation, then we can finally relax. It is like trying to build a stable home on the surface of a river. We may construct something magnificent for a moment, but the current is always moving underneath. The Buddhist path does not ask us to abandon the world or stop building. Instead, it offers a radical shift in perspective. Learn the nature of the river. Discover a stability that isn't dependent on the riverbanks, but is found in understanding the water itself. This leads us to a core practice, mindfulness. Mindfulness is not about achieving a blank mind or a state of perpetual calm. It is the gentle, persistent act of returning to present moment experience with an attitude of open curiosity. It is remembering to feel the actual sensation of your feet on the ground while you worry about tomorrow. It is noticing the tightness in your chest when a difficult email arrives, and simply saying inwardly, tension is here. It is tasting the first sip of your morning tea as if it were the first and last sip you will ever take. This practice deconstructs our habitual state of living on autopilot, where we are lost in thoughts about the past or future, completely missing the vivid reality of now. The present moment is the only place where life is actually happening. The past is a memory, a story. The future is an anticipation, a fantasy. Both are mental images. Only the now is real. And it is in the direct, unfiltered experience of the now that we can see the truths of impermanence and non-self in action. I knew a man, a long-distance truck driver, who discovered this in an unexpected way. For years, his life was the monotony of the highway, mile after mile, the same rumble of the engine, the same painted lines passing underneath. He filled the hours with loud radio, constant phone calls, and his own spiraling thoughts of resentment and boredom. He felt trapped in a metal box, his life slipping away between exits. One day, in a traffic jam under a vast, open sky, his radio failed. The silence was startling. With nothing to distract him, he began, almost against his will, to just look. He noticed the incredible variety of clouds, not just clouds, but towering castles of white, wisps like brushed silk, dark, promising bundles of rain. He saw how the light changed on the fields, turning from bright gold to deep blue shadow. He started to feel the subtle vibrations of the truck not as an annoyance, but as a steady, living hum. He began to pay attention to his own breath, to the feeling of his hands on the wheel. His cross-country route didn't change. The traffic jam still happened. But his experience of being alive within it was utterly transformed. He was no longer a prisoner in a box, trying to escape the miles. He became an explorer, discovering a universe of detail and sensation within each mile. His journey became his meditation. He found a profound freedom not by changing his external circumstances, but by changing his relationship to his present moment experience. He learned to inhabit the river of his life, rather than just complaining about its direction. This is the power of mindfulness. It creates a space between a stimulus and our reaction. In that space lies our freedom. Without it, we are slaves to our conditioning. An insult arises, and anger instantly boils. A craving appears, and we reach for our phone or the refrigerator. We are puppets on the strings of past habits. Mindfulness is the act of seeing the strings. It allows us to pause and ask, is this reaction necessary? Does it serve peace? Or am I just following an old, worn-out program? This doesn't mean we become passive. It means our responses can become more intelligent, more compassionate, and more aligned with our deepest values, rather than our deepest fears. The Buddha systematized this path of awakening into what is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is not a linear checklist, but 8 interconnected facets of a life lived wisely. They are, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Think of them as the essential nutrients for a healthy mind. You don't consume them one at a time, they work together synergistically. Right view is the foundation. The understanding of how things truly are. It's seeing the truth of suffering, its cause and craving, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. It is the map that arises from your own mindful investigation. Right intention is the direction of the heart that springs from that understanding. It is the commitment to let go of craving, to cultivate goodwill and kindness, and to harm no living being. It is setting your internal compass toward freedom and compassion. From this foundation, our behavior naturally begins to align. Right speech means speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully, avoiding gossip, harsh words, and idle chatter. Right action means acting in ways that do no harm, refraining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Right livelihood extends this principle into our work, encouraging us to earn a living in a way that does not cause suffering or exploit others. But such a life requires energy. That's right effort. The balanced, persistent energy we apply to cultivate wholesome states of mind, like generosity and patience, and to let go of unwholesome ones, like greed and ill will. It is the diligent gardening of the mind. The tool that makes all this effort skillful is right mindfulness, the practice of sustained, present moment awareness of body, feelings, mind, and mental objects that we've been discussing. And as mindfulness deepens, it matures into right concentration, the ability to unify the mind, to collect its scattered energy and rest it steadily on a single object of awareness, leading to deep calm and penetrating insight. Walking this path is not about becoming a saint. It is about becoming sane. It is about untangling the knots of confusion that cause us to suffer and to cause others to suffer. It is a gentle, lifelong homecoming. Let's go deeper now, into a territory that often causes fear but holds immense liberating power, the nature of the self. We've touched on Anicca, non-self. This is perhaps the most challenging of the Buddha's insights for the modern mind to grasp, wrapped as we are in a culture of fierce individualism. We are told to be yourself, to find yourself, to express yourself. The Buddha's question is more radical. When you look, what is it that you are calling yourself? Try a simple experiment. In this moment of quiet, ask yourself, who am I? Let the answers arise. I am a person listening. I am someone who feels tired. I am a father, a daughter, a worker. Now, look closely at each of those answers. Are they permanent? The listener will stop listening. The tiredness will give way to alertness. The roles are relationships that change and end. These are temporary labels, descriptions of activities or conditions. They are not a solid, central core. The Buddha taught that what we take to be a self is a collection of 5 khandhas, or aggregates, operating together. Imagine a chariot. Is the wheel the chariot? Is the axle? The reins? The carriage? No one part is the chariot. The word chariot is just a convenient label for a temporary assembly of parts that are themselves constantly wearing down and being replaced. Our sense of I is the same, a convenient label for a flowing process of physical and mental phenomena. I remember an artist who worked with light installations. She would project complex, shifting patterns of color onto walls and ceilings. People would walk into her galleries and be mesmerized by the beautiful, coherent shapes, a swirling galaxy, a dancing figure, a serene landscape. But if you walked up to the wall and touched it, there was nothing there but plain white paint. The thing they were admiring was an illusion created by the interplay of a light source, a lens, and a moving filter. Her most powerful piece was one where she let the audience see the machinery. You could watch the humble projector, the clicking filter wheel, the dust motes in the beam. Seeing the cause of the magic didn't ruin the beauty, it deepened it. It shifted wonder from the image on the wall to the astonishing process that could create such an image. Our sense of self is that beautiful projection. The khandhas, the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, are the projector and the light. When we take the projected image to be solid and real, we suffer when it flickers or changes. When we understand the process, we can appreciate the display without fear, knowing its ephemeral, magical nature. We are not the image. We are closer to the light itself, the aware, knowing space in which the entire show appears and disappears. Why is this insight so crucial? Because all of our psychological suffering is rooted in self-referential thinking. I am inadequate. My plans are ruined. She hurt me. This constant referencing to a central, solid entity creates a locus of vulnerability. It's as if we have a precious, fragile statue in the center of our being, and we spend our lives trying to protect it from every bump and breeze of experience. This is exhausting. Anatta is the realization that there is no fragile statue to protect. There is just the open room of awareness, and the passing weather of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. You are the room, not the weather. When a storm of anger arises, the room doesn't need to do anything. It holds the storm until it passes. This is true resilience. This understanding transforms our relationship with fear. Most fear is, at its root, fear for the safety of this imagined self. Fear of failure is the fear that the successful me projection will be proven false. Fear of rejection is the fear that the likable me projection will be dismantled. Fear of death is the ultimate fear that the entire projection will be shut off. But if you investigate and see that the me is a process, not a thing, what is there to die? The physical body will change form, yes. The mental processes will cease. But the awareness that knew the body and the mind, can you find a beginning or an end to that? It is the timeless context, not the temporary content. A retired schoolteacher once told me a story about her final year before retirement. She had built her identity around being Ms. Evans, the beloved, firm, knowledgeable guide to generations of children. As the last day approached, she felt a creeping panic. Who would she be when she was no longer in her classroom? The prospect felt like an erasure. On her final day, her students and colleagues threw her a party. There were speeches, gifts, and a giant banner that said, "We'll miss you, Ms. Evans." She cried, feeling both cherished and hollow. That night, alone in her quiet home, the silence was deafening. The role was over. For weeks, she drifted, that Ms. Evans' ghost lingering. Then, one afternoon, she was pulling weeds in her garden, her hands deep in the soil, utterly absorbed in the simple task of distinguishing plant from weed. A profound sense of peace settled over her. In that moment, she wasn't Ms. Evans, the teacher. She wasn't Margaret, the retiree. She was just presence. Awareness feeling the sun, the dirt, the green life. She realized the role had been a costume she wore beautifully for a season. Taking it off didn't leave her naked, it left her real. The love she gave wasn't stored in the title, teacher, it was a quality of her being that could now flow into her garden, her friendships, her quiet mornings. The fear of being no one had given way to the relief of being free from the constraints of being someone. She had touched Anatta, and found it was not a void, but a vast, peaceful capacity to be. This is the great unburdening. We spend so much energy upholding a fiction. Seeing through it doesn't lead to nihilism. It leads to a lighter, more authentic, and infinitely more compassionate engagement with life. As we continue, let's explore the practical heart of the path, the cultivation of a friendly heart. Wisdom and compassion are the two wings of the bird of awakening. One without the other cannot fly. Anatta, the wisdom of non-self, might sound abstract, but its most beautiful and immediate expression is in the quality of our relationships, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. When the hard shell of I and mine softens, what naturally arises is a sense of connection, of shared experience. We see that the very forces that drive us, the desire for happiness, the fear of pain, the search for safety, are the same forces moving within every being we meet. This recognition is the seed of boundless compassion, or karuna. Compassion in Buddhism is not sentimental pity, nor is it a draining sense of obligation. It is a clear-eyed, resilient willingness to be present with suffering, our own and others, and the heartfelt wish for that suffering to be relieved. It is the natural response of a heart that is no longer completely barricaded behind the walls of self-concern. It starts with ourselves. Often, we are our own harshest critics. We meet our own failures, flaws, and fears with impatience, judgment, and anger. The practice of self-compassion is the revolutionary act of turning a friendly attention inward. It is learning to say to the anxious part of yourself, "It's okay. I see you are afraid. I am here with you." This is not self-indulgence, it is the essential foundation. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot offer genuine kindness to others if you are at war with yourself. I heard of a nurse who worked in an intensive care unit, a place of immense suffering and high stakes. For years, she prided herself on her tough exterior, her clinical efficiency, her ability to compartmentalize. She believed this hardness was her strength. But over time, a deep fatigue set in, not just physical, but of the soul. She felt brittle, disconnected, and secretly resentful of her patients' needs. During a mandatory wellness workshop, a facilitator led a simple meditation on self-kindness. The instruction was to place a hand on the heart and silently repeat, "May I be kind to myself." For this nurse, it felt absurd, even weak. But in the quiet of the exercise, as she felt the warmth of her own hand, something cracked. A wave of grief for her own exhaustion surfaced, exhaustion she had been ignoring for years. For the first time, she offered a moment of mercy to the weary caregiver within. That small crack let the light in. She didn't become a less competent nurse. She became a different one. She began to see her patients not as cases, but as frightened human beings, just as she was. Her touch became gentler, her eye contact more sincere. The efficiency remained, but it was now wrapped in a palpable, calming presence. Her colleagues noticed. Patients' families felt it. She found that this softness was not a weakness, but a deeper, more resilient form of strength. It allowed her to be with suffering without being destroyed by it. Her compassion became sustainable because it was now rooted in a compassionate relationship with herself. From this foundation, compassion flows outward naturally. The formal practice of metta, or loving-kindness meditation, is a powerful tool to cultivate this. We start by directing well wishes toward ourselves. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at ease. Then, we gradually extend these wishes to a benefactor, a neutral person, a difficult person, and ultimately to all beings everywhere. This practice isn't about forcing a feeling. It's about planting seeds. It's a training of the heart, breaking down the habitual barriers of us and them. When you sincerely wish for the difficult person in your life to be at ease, you are not condoning their harmful behavior. You are recognizing their humanity, their own entanglement in suffering, and wishing for their freedom from it. This disentangles your heart from resentment, which is a poison you drink hoping the other person will die. This boundless care is what makes the path alive and relevant. Wisdom shows us the emptiness of separate self. Compassion is the fullness of connection that fills that emptiness. It is the active expression of our interdependence. Your peace contributes to my peace. My clarity can help soothe your confusion. We are not isolated islands, we are a vast, interconnected archipelago, with life flowing beneath the surface between us. Consider a community garden in a dense city. Individual plots are tended by different people with different styles. One gardener grows neat rows of tomatoes, another a wildflower jungle, another specializes in herbs. They have their separate identities as gardeners. But underground, the roots intertwine, sharing nutrients and moisture. Bees pollinate across all plots indiscriminately. The compost pile transforms the waste from one plot into rich food for all. The garden thrives not because each plot is isolated and perfect, but because of this unseen network of giving and receiving. Our lives are this garden. Our seeming separateness is the plot we tend on the surface. Our fundamental interconnectedness is the rich, shared soil below. Compassion is the conscious act of gardening with this truth in mind, knowing that the health of your neighbor's plot ultimately nourishes your own. This shift from a mindset of scarcity and competition to one of shared humanity and generosity is the heart of an ethical life. It makes right speech, action, and livelihood not rigid rules, but natural expressions of a caring heart. Why would you speak harshly if you see the other as a version of yourself, equally vulnerable? Why would you take what isn't given, if you understand that taking creates a tear in the shared fabric? The path becomes motivated not by fear of punishment or desire for reward, but by a clear, compassionate understanding of cause and effect. Let us now turn to one of the most powerful, yet often misunderstood, gates to freedom, the practice of letting go. We hear this phrase often, just let go, as if it were a simple act of release, like opening a clenched fist. But what are we actually holding? We are not just holding on to objects or people, we are holding on to ideas, expectations, and, most tenaciously, our version of how things should be. Letting go, in the Buddhist sense, is not an act of loss, but an act of profound recognition. It is seeing clearly that what we are trying to hold was never truly graspable to begin with. It is the relaxation that comes when we stop trying to nail the river to the riverbed. The Buddha pinpointed the root of this gripping as tanha, craving or thirst. This thirst has three main streams: the thirst for sensual pleasure, the thirst for becoming, and the thirst for non-becoming. The first is obvious, the desire for pleasant experiences. The second is subtler, the desire to be something, to solidify our identity, to become richer, wiser, more respected. The third is the flip side, the desire to not be something. To avoid pain, to annihilate unpleasant feelings, to escape what we are. All of this is an attempt to manage an experience that is inherently unmanageable because it is in constant flux. Letting go is the wisdom that sees the futility of this management project and chooses to cease the effort. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. It means our engagement with life shifts from one of control to one of partnership. Imagine you are learning to partner dance. If you are stiff, trying to lead forcefully and predict every step, the dance is a struggle, awkward and exhausting for both. But if you learn to listen to the music, feel your partner's subtle movements, and relax your own posture into the flow, the dance becomes graceful, spontaneous, and joyful. You haven't given up dancing, you've given up your dictatorship over it. Life is that dance. Our plans, our preferences, our fears are our attempts to lead. Letting go is learning to follow the music of the present moment, to move with what is, rather than against it. I recall a story about a master calligrapher. A student watched in awe as the master, with a few seemingly effortless strokes, created a character of breathtaking beauty and balance. The student begged to know the secret. "It is all in the release," the master said. He explained that the beginner grips the brush tightly, trying to control its every movement, resulting in tense, shaky lines. The master holds the brush with a relaxed hand, his awareness not on controlling the tip, but on the empty space the character will occupy. His intention moves, and the brush, as an extension of his arm but not a prisoner of his will, translates that intention onto the paper. The beauty emerges not from tight control, but from a harmonious relationship between intention, tool, and space. The final stroke is always a deliberate release, allowing the ink to settle as it will. The student realized the lesson was not about calligraphy, but about living. We grip our lives with a beginner's tense hand, trying to force outcomes. Mastery lies in holding our intentions lightly, engaging fully, and then releasing the result to the larger canvas of life. Right effort on the Noble Eightfold Path is deeply related to this. It is not the effort to make things happen, but the effort to cultivate the conditions for letting go. It involves a gentle, persistent nurturing of wholesome states, like generosity, patience, and kindness, and a gentle, persistent letting be of unwholesome states, like anger, greed, and anxiety. We don't fight the unwholesome states, that is just another form of gripping. We simply recognize, this is here, and kindly refuse to fuel it with our attention or our actions. We turn our light instead toward the wholesome. This is like tending a garden. You don't spend all day angrily hacking at weeds, you carefully water the flowers you wish to grow. The weeds, deprived of attention, gradually lose their hold. A powerful arena for this practice is in our relationship with thoughts. We often believe we are our thoughts. A thought arises, "I'm not good enough," and we immediately inhabit it, build a case for it, feel the sinking feeling in our gut. We have been kidnapped by a mental event. Mindfulness of thoughts allows us to see them as just that, events. They appear in the sky of the mind like clouds. Some are dark and stormy, some are light and whimsical. We can notice them without having to board them and be taken for a ride. We can say, "There is a thought of inadequacy," and simply let it drift on by. This is a fundamental letting go. It breaks the spell of the thinking mind's tyranny. We are not the content of our thoughts, we are the aware space in which thoughts are known. I knew a man, a veteran, who was haunted by traumatic memories. For years, he was at war with his own mind, trying to suppress the intrusive images and feelings, which only gave them more power. In therapy, he was introduced to a mindfulness-based approach. He was taught not to fight the memories, but to observe them with a detached, almost clinical curiosity when they arose. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice the images as if they are on a screen. Notice the emotions as sensations that come and go. This was an act of supreme courage, to stop running and turn toward the pain. At first, it was overwhelming. But gradually, he made a discovery. The memory itself was not the problem. His desperate resistance to it was what created the ongoing suffering. By letting the memory be present without fighting it, it lost its sharp, cutting edge. It became a sad, painful story from the past, but it no longer felt like a present-day reality threatening to destroy him. He had learned to let go of the war with his experience. In that letting go, he found a peace that had been impossible while he was still gripping his weapon of resistance. This is the profound alchemy of the path. We learn to let go not of life, but of our tortured, controlling relationship with life. We let go of the demand that life be other than what it is in this moment. In that surrender, we find not defeat, but a collaboration with reality that is infinitely more intelligent and peaceful than our solitary struggle could ever be. Let's explore a concept that is both a great motivator and a profound teacher on this path, the contemplation of our own mortality. In a culture that often treats death as a medical failure or a taboo subject, the Buddha instructed his followers to reflect on it regularly. He called mindfulness of death the supreme meditation. Why? Because the honest, gentle acknowledgement of our inevitable end cuts through all pretense and triviality. It acts like a refining fire, burning away what is unimportant and leaving only what is essential. It asks us the most urgent question. Knowing that this breath could be your last, how will you live this one? This is not a practice of morbidity. It is a practice of vivid aliveness. Imagine you are told you have 1 week left in a city you've lived in for years but have never truly seen. How would you spend that week? You would likely stop your routine. You would visit the places you always meant to see. You would savor your favorite foods with intense presence. You would tell people you love them. You would forgive old grudges. Your senses would be heightened, your heart open. Mindfulness of death is choosing to live as if you had that clarity, not because death is imminent, but because life is precisely that precious and uncertain. It reminds us that our time with our loved ones, our ability to see the sky, to feel the breeze, is not a given. It is a temporary, miraculous gift. This reflection naturally steers us toward the heart of the spiritual journey. Many spiritual traditions seek answers about an afterlife. Buddhism turns the question around. Instead of asking, what happens after death, it asks, what is ending when death occurs? To investigate this, we must look at what we call life. If we see that life is a stream of changing aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, then death is the ending of that particular, temporary stream. The awareness that witnessed the stream, however, is more difficult to locate in time. The Buddha remained silent on metaphysical speculations about an eternal soul or annihilation. He focused on the practical. The end of suffering is possible here and now, in the way we relate to this stream of experience. Freedom is not found in the future, but in the quality of our presence in the current moment. By making peace with the reality of death, we are forced to make peace with the reality of life as it is, impermanent, unsatisfactory in its clinging, and not self. A story comes to mind of a woman who worked as a palliative care nurse. She spent her days with people in their final chapters. She noticed a distinct difference between those who met their end with resistance, clinging to lost identities, raging against the diagnosis, and those who met it with a kind of peaceful surrender. The peaceful ones were not necessarily religious. They were, she observed, the ones who had somehow come to terms with impermanence. They had forgiven, expressed love, and let go of old resentments. One man in particular, a former businessman known for his fierce ambition, taught her a lesson. In his final days, he had no interest in discussing his past deals or accolades. He asked her to open the window. He would spend hours watching a squirrel forage in a tree outside, his face relaxed in a gentle smile. "I spent my life building an empire," he told her quietly one afternoon. "I thought it was so solid. But this," he said, nodding to the squirrel, "this is real. This moment. This breath. I missed it all, chasing a future that never came." His regret was palpable, but so was his late-found wisdom. His empire, his identity as a titan, had already died before his body did. In its passing, he discovered the simple, alive presence he had overlooked. His story became her most powerful teaching tool, not for her patients, but for herself, to remember not to postpone joy, connection, or presence for a future that is not promised. This brings us to the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path, nibbana, or nirvana. It is often shrouded in mystery, imagined as a heavenly realm or a state of blank nothingness. In essence, nibbana is the extinguishing of the fires that cause all suffering, the fire of greed, raga, the fire of hatred, dosa, and the fire of delusion, moha. It is not a place you go, but a fundamental transformation of the mind here and now. It is the mind free from the distorting lenses of craving and aversion, seeing things as they are, yatha Buddha. It is the peace that is not dependent on conditions, the coolness when the fever of selfish desire breaks. Imagine a room filled with smoke from a small fire. The smoke is thick, stinging your eyes, making it hard to see or breathe. This is the mind clouded by greed, hatred, and delusion. Our instinct is to try and fan away the smoke, to rearrange the furniture, to blame the room. The path teaches us to find the fire and put it out. When the fire of craving is extinguished, the smoke naturally clears. The room, your mind, was always there, with its inherent space and potential for clarity. The peace of nibbana is the peace of that clear, smokeless room. It is not an exciting, blissful high. It is a deep, unshakable tranquility and clarity that can hold both joy and sorrow without being overthrown by either. This freedom is not reserved for monks in caves. It is a potentiality for every human heart. It is cultivated through the daily, moment-to-moment practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. Every time you pause before speaking harshly, that is nibbana cooling the fire of hatred. Every time you let go of a rumination about the past, that is nibbana dispersing the smoke of delusion. Every time you feel a generous impulse without calculation, that is nibbana quenching the fire of greed. It is not a distant finish line, it is the quality of the steps themselves when taken with wisdom and compassion. Therefore, the contemplation of death is not a dead end. It is a signpost that points with fierce urgency back to life. To this breath, this sensation, this opportunity to choose kindness, to release a grudge, to be truly here. It tells us that the time to water the seeds of peace is now. The time to let go of what chokes our hearts is now. The future is a concept. The past is a memory. Only in the undeniable reality of the present can we touch freedom. Now, let's bring our attention to a force that shapes our world and our inner experience more than we often realize: the power of intention. Before any word is spoken or any action is taken, there is an impulse, a leaning of the heart. In the language of the Buddhist path, this is satana, or volition. The Buddha called intention the karma maker. It is the seed from which all consequences grow. Our lives are not just a series of random events, they are a tapestry woven by the quality of our countless, moment-to-moment intentions. Are they rooted in generosity or greed? In kindness or aversion? In clarity or confusion? This subtle inner movement is the true starting point of our reality. Understanding this places immense power and responsibility in our hands. We often feel victimized by external circumstances, by what others say or do. But the Buddha's teaching on karma is not about passive fate. It is about active creation. It says that while we cannot control every event that happens to us, we have sovereignty over our response, and that response begins with the intention we choose to nurture. A harsh word is spoken to you. The event is the sound. Your suffering begins with the intention to take it personally, to retaliate, to build a story of victimhood. Your peace begins with the intention to listen, to understand, to respond with clarity instead of react from hurt. The outer event may be the same, but the inner world, and the future it creates, is entirely different based on that split-second directional nudge of the heart. This is where right intention, the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, becomes our practical guide. The Buddha outlined three specific right intentions: the intention of renunciation, the intention of goodwill, and the intention of harmlessness. Let's unpack these. The intention of renunciation is not about giving up all worldly possessions and moving to a monastery. It is the inner movement of letting go of clinging. It is the intention to not be enslaved by craving. When you feel the pull to scroll mindlessly on your phone, the intention of renunciation is the gentle, inner, no, thank you, that allows you to put it down. It is the decision to not feed a desire that, if fed, will lead to agitation. It is choosing space over stuff. The intention of goodwill, metta, is the active wish for happiness for yourself and others. It is the opposite of ill will, resentment, or indifference. When you see someone, before your mind categorizes them as friend, stranger, or foe, you can silently plant the seed, "May you be well." This intention softens your own heart and changes the energetic field of any interaction. The intention of harmlessness, avihimsa, is the commitment to not cause suffering. It is the foundation of ethical conduct. It is the intention that checks a harsh comment before it leaves your lips, that chooses a truthful but gentle phrasing, that opts for a livelihood that doesn't exploit. Cultivating these intentions is like programming the navigation system of your mind. You are setting the destination: freedom, kindness, peace. From that setting, right speech, action, and livelihood become the natural route the journey takes. I remember a teacher who taught young children. She had a student, a little boy, who was constantly disruptive, kicking chairs, shouting out, snatching toys. Her initial intentions were frustration, a desire for control, and even resentment. She saw him as a problem. Then, she learned about intention. One morning, before the children arrived, she sat at her desk and deliberately set an intention: today, I will look for the goodness in this child. I will meet his behavior with curiosity, not condemnation. The boy's actions didn't magically change that day. But she changed. Instead of seeing a defiant child, she began to see a scared, struggling little boy. She noticed the moments of quiet focus when he thought no one was watching. She saw the flicker of pride when he managed to share a crayon. Her responses shifted from punitive to supportive. She started connecting with him on the playground, talking about dinosaurs. Slowly, over weeks, a relationship built on her intention of goodwill began to transform his behavior. The problem didn't disappear through force, it dissolved through the power of a consistently kind intention. The karma she was creating shifted from one of conflict to one of connection, changing both of their experiences entirely. This principle applies to our relationship with ourselves. Our internal dialogue is a constant stream of intentions. I'm so stupid is an intention of self-harm. This is difficult, but I can learn is an intention of goodwill toward oneself. Which seed do you wish to water? The thought itself is the planting. The feeling that follows is the first sprout. The action you take is the grown plant. We are the gardeners of our inner world, and intention is the choice of seed. So, how do we cultivate right intention? It begins with mindfulness. We must first become aware of our intentions. Pause throughout the day and ask, what is my underlying aim in this conversation? In this task? Is it to prove myself? To get something? Or is it to be present, to be kind, to be of service? This honest inquiry is revolutionary. It moves us from being unconscious puppets of habit to conscious artists of our lives. When you notice an unwholesome intention, you don't need to attack it. Simply acknowledge it. There is an intention to prove I'm right. Seeing it clearly often softens its grip. Then, you can gently redirect, but my deeper intention is to understand and find peace. This is the active, creative work of the path. We are not just passive observers of an unfolding movie. We are the writers, directors, and lead actors, and intention is the pen with which we write each scene. Choose your ink with care. Let's turn our attention now to a concept that acts as the very ground for our practice. The principle of cause and effect, known as karma, or karma. Far from a simplistic system of cosmic reward and punishment, karma is the Buddha's profound teaching on ethical causality. It is the natural law that our intentional actions of body, speech, and mind have consequences. These consequences shape our character, our experiences, and the world around us. Think of it not as fate, but as habit formation on a cosmic scale. Every thought nurtured, every word chosen, every deed performed is a seed planted. The harvest may not be immediate, but it is inevitable. We live in the field of our own past planting, and in this present moment, we are given the endless opportunity to plant new seeds for a future harvest of peace or suffering. This understanding infuses our lives with both gravity and grace. The gravity lies in the responsibility. We cannot blame the universe, our parents, or our circumstances for the quality of our mind. The patterns of reactivity, the tendencies toward greed or generosity, have been reinforced by our own past choices. The grace lies in the freedom, right now, in this very breath, we can choose to plant a different seed. We are not prisoners of our past. The next intention, the next action, is a new beginning. This is the active, hopeful heart of the teaching. It tells us that change is always possible because we are always creating our future in the present. This is intimately tied to the teaching of Anatta, non-self. If there is no fixed, unchanging soul, then what transmigrates or carries the consequences of karma? It is the momentum of the mental continuum itself, the stream of consciousness, carrying the imprints and habits, sankharas, from one moment to the next, like a river carrying sediment. Your anger today doesn't condemn an eternal you, but it does strengthen the habit of anger in the mental stream, making it more likely to arise tomorrow. Your act of patience today weakens that habit and strengthens the habit of patience. You are, in every moment, sculpting the contours of your own mind. This is why the path is a path of mental training. A story comes to mind of two neighbors. One, an elderly man, had a garden that was the envy of the street. Explosions of color, perfectly tended. The other, a younger man, had a patch of dirt, weeds, and a few struggling plants. The younger man often felt jealous and resentful, thinking the old man was just lucky or had more time. One spring, the old man fell ill and was hospitalized for several weeks. The younger man, seeing the garden begin to wilt, felt a strange tug. He started watering it, just a little at first. Then he pulled a few obvious weeds. Without realizing it, he found himself spending a few minutes each evening in his neighbor's garden. He began to notice things, which plants needed more sun, which were being eaten by bugs. He started to care. When the old man returned home, weak but recovering, he saw his garden not only alive but thriving. The younger man, embarrassed, muttered something about just trying to help. The old man simply placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Thank you for tending the garden. But tell me, how does your own plot look?" The younger man was ashamed to admit it was still a mess. The old man smiled. "The soil is the same. The sun is the same. The water from your hose is the same. You've learned to care for beauty here. Now, take that care home." The lesson was clear. The younger man had been planting seeds of jealousy and neglect in his own life, which yielded a barren plot. By choosing, even unintentionally, to act with care for another, he planted new seeds of attentiveness and generosity. Those seeds, once planted, could now be watered in his own life. His future harvest was being determined by the choices he made in the present, in his own mind and actions. This is the practical application of karma. We often look for grand, dramatic ways to change our lives. But transformation happens in the small, daily choices. Choosing to listen instead of interrupt, choosing to complete a task with care instead of haste, choosing a wholesome thought over a destructive one. Each choice is a seed. Our life is the cumulative garden. This understanding also fosters tremendous compassion. When we see someone acting from greed, hatred, or delusion, we can understand they are suffering, caught in the painful consequences of their own past seeds and planting new ones that will yield more suffering. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it shifts our response from personal anger to a clearer, more compassionate desire to stop the cycle of harm, both for our sake and for theirs. It helps us break the chain of retaliation, for we see that returning hate for hate only plants more seeds of hate in our own mind stream. Therefore, mindfulness of karma is not a heavy burden of judgment. It is the ultimate empowerment. It says, "Your future is in your hands, and your hands are acting right now. What seed will you plant in this moment of interaction? In this moment of solitude?" The path encourages us to plant seeds of non-regret, actions that, when we look back, we will be glad we performed. For a mind free from the weeds of regret is a mind that is clear, light, and open to the peace of the present. Now, we arrive at a place of synthesis, where wisdom meets the ground of our daily experience. It is one thing to understand impermanence while sitting in quiet reflection, it is another to meet it when change arrives as a sudden loss, a diagnosis, or a broken dream. This is where the path ceases to be a theory and becomes an art, the art of living with a wise heart in an unpredictable world. The Buddha's teachings are not an armor to shield us from life, but a way to learn the dance with life, to move in harmony with its rhythm rather than being trampled by its steps. Consider the practice of equanimity, known as upekkha. This is not indifference or cold detachment. It is the balanced, spacious heart that can hold joy and sorrow, gain and loss, praise and blame, without being swept away by any of them. It is the deep understanding that all these conditions are visitors, they come and go according to causes we cannot fully control. Equanimity is the peace that comes from letting go of the exhausting struggle to control the uncontrollable. It is the mental and emotional stability that allows us to respond rather than react. Imagine being in the eye of a hurricane. All around is chaos and wind, but at the center there is a profound stillness. That stillness is not separate from the storm, it is the calm space within it. Equanimity is that inner eye. It is cultivated through the direct seeing of Anicca and Anatta. When we know that pleasant feelings will fade, we can enjoy them without clinging. When we know that unpleasant feelings will also fade, we can endure them without despair. When we know that neither defines a permanent self, we can meet them with a compassionate, observing presence. This balanced heart is what allows compassion to become sustainable. Without equanimity, compassion can turn into burnout, a painful over-identification with the suffering of others. With equanimity, compassion becomes a clear, calm wish for the relief of suffering, coupled with the wisdom that we cannot carry another's karmic load, but we can walk beside them with kindness. It is the difference between jumping into a turbulent river to save someone and throwing them a lifeline from the steady bank. Both are acts of care, but one preserves the clarity needed to truly help. I recall a story about a lighthouse keeper on a remote, rocky coast. His sole duty was to keep the light burning through the fiercest storms, guiding ships away from the cliffs. For years, he would watch storms rage, feeling each gust of wind as a personal assault, agonizing over every ship that struggled. He took the turbulence of the sea into his own body and mind, and he grew weary and resentful. One night, during a particularly violent gale, as he climbed the spiraling stairs to tend the lamp, he paused at a small, narrow window. For a moment, he stopped fighting the storm in his mind. He simply looked out. He saw the awesome, terrifying power of the waves, the driving rain, the blackness. And he saw his small, steady beam of light cutting through it all, unwavering. In that moment, he understood his role not as a fighter of the storm, but as the keeper of the light. His job was not to calm the sea, but to maintain a point of reference within it. His inner storm settled. He continued his work, but now with a quiet, steadfast calm. He felt compassion for the sailors, but it was no longer a frantic, co-suffering. It was a clear, steady intention for their safety, grounded in the stability of his own purpose. His equanimity didn't diminish his care, it made his care effective and enduring. This is the integration we seek. It is bringing the lighthouse mind into our relationships, our work, and our inner dialogues. When a conflict arises, can we be the still point within it, offering the clear light of honest speech rather than the storm of reaction? When anxiety about the future grips us, can we find the steady beam of the present breath? This is the practice of a lifetime. The beauty of this path is that it meets us exactly where we are. You do not need to wait for a quieter time or a more ideal circumstance to begin. Your mind, in this moment, with all its currents of thought and feeling, is the perfect place to start. Notice what is here. Is there tension? Notice it. Is there planning? Notice it. Is there a subtle undercurrent of wanting or aversion? Notice it. This noticing, without judgment, is the first and final step. It is the application of wisdom. It is the expression of compassion toward your own experience. It is the essence of the path. So, as we prepare to close, let this not be an end, but a continuation. Carry this question as a gentle companion. In this moment, what is happening? And can I meet it with a wise and kindly heart? The answer unfolds breath by breath, in a practice that does not end, but deepens into the very fabric of being. As we arrive at the end of our journey together, let's gather everything into the simplicity of this single, breathing moment. All the wisdom of the Buddha, all the teachings on impermanence, non-self, compassion, and the path, ultimately point here, to the quality of your awareness, right now. The goal was never to build a perfect philosophy in the mind, but to allow that understanding to settle into the heart, to soften the gaze, and to lighten the step. It is about coming home to an unshakable peace that resides not in perfect conditions, but in a profound friendship with things as they are. So, what truly matters? If life is as fleeting as a breath, what is of ultimate importance? The Buddha's answer is clear: freedom. Freedom from the suffering that arises when we cling to what is passing. Freedom from the prison of a fixed and separate self. Freedom to meet each moment, whether it brings joy or sorrow, success or failure, health or sickness, with a heart that is open, clear, and kind. This freedom is not a distant reward. It is a possibility in this very breath. It begins when you pause. When you notice the clutch of wanting or the grip of fear. When you soften around it. When you remember that you are the vast sky, not the weather passing through. Your life, with all its mundane details and profound challenges, is your practice ground. The difficult coworker, the traffic jam, the quiet morning coffee, the hug from a loved one, the disappointment, the unexpected kindness, each is an invitation. An invitation to see clearly, to let go, to respond with wisdom rather than react from habit. You do not need to go to a monastery. The monastery is your own mindful attention, and the bell that calls you to wakefulness is the sound of your own life, happening now. Therefore, as you move from this space of listening back into the flow of your world, carry one simple intention. Just one. It need not be grand. Perhaps it is. I will pause and feel 3 breaths today when I feel stress building. Or, I will listen to one person with my full attention, without preparing my reply. Or, I will notice and appreciate one small, beautiful thing I normally rush past. Do not try to overhaul your life. Just make one stitch of mindfulness in the fabric of your day. Then another. And another. This is how a new pattern is woven. Not by tearing out the old cloth, but by gently, patiently, weaving in new threads of awareness and care. The path of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The path to freedom begins with a single, conscious breath. You have already begun. The awareness that has been listening, that has been feeling, that knows the rise and fall of your chest, that awareness is your true refuge. It is timeless, peaceful, and already free. Trust it. Return to it. It is your home. Thank you for spending this time at Monk's Temple. May the seeds of peace and understanding we have touched here take root in your heart. May you walk through your days with gentle awareness. May you be well. May you be peaceful. May you be free. Good night.